Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The thing about ice planets is that they don't kill you quickly. No, that would be merciful. Instead, they peel away your warmth degree by degree, layer by layer, until you're so cold you forget what heat even feels like. Arcturus 9 was particularly vindictive about it, a mining colony perched on the edge of Alliance space where the temperature was a balmy, exposed skin freezes in 90 seconds, on a good day. Lieutenant Violet had been stationed there for 8 months, which made her either incredibly unlucky or phenomenally stupid. The jury was still out. "Wilt, remind me why I took this posting again?" Violet muttered into her comm unit, her breath fogging inside her helmet, despite the heating elements working overtime. "You needed the hazard pay to settle your student loans," the AI responded in its annoyingly cheerful synthetic voice. "Also, and I quote from your application essay, how hard can babysitting some minors be?" "Past me was an idiot. Present, you isn't faring much better. You're walking directly into a Category 6 blizzard." Violet squinted through the whiteout conditions, her thermal overlay barely picking up the outline of the abandoned warehouse district ahead. Someone had triggered an emergency beacon out here, which was either a legitimate distress call or, more likely, some poor fool who'd wandered off route and was now enjoying the first stages of hypothermia. The wind screamed around her like a living thing. Her suit's integrity monitor blinked amber warnings about ice accumulation on her joints. Another normal day in paradise. "Beacon source is 30 meters ahead," Wilt announced. "Vital signs are peculiar." "Peculiar how?" "Multiple readings. Small, non-human." Violet's hand dropped to her plasma pistol out of instinct. Non-human could mean a lot of things out here. Most of them weren't friendly. The warehouse loomed out of the storm like a metal ghost, its doors hanging open and banging in the wind. Violet's helmet lamp cut through the darkness inside, illuminating scattered crates and broken equipment. And then she saw them. 3 pairs of eyes reflected her light back at her. Golden. Unblinking. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," Violet breathed. They were Orathi cubs. Couldn't be more than 3 months old, covered in downy fur that was matted with ice and grime. They huddled together in the corner, tiny bodies shaking, making these pitiful mewling sounds that somehow carried over the wind. Orathi, apex predators. The species that had fought the Alliance to a standstill in 3 separate wars before everyone agreed that mutual respect was preferable to mutual extinction. Adults stood 9 feet tall with retractable claws that could punch through starship hull plating, and bite force that made Earth's ancient tyrannosaurs look like house pets. These cubs were the size of large dogs, their oversized paws promising future lethality, their teeth already sharp enough to shred meat. And they were dying. "Wilt, scan for adult Orathi in the vicinity." "Negative. No large life signs within 5 kilometers. "Where's their mother?" "Unknown. However, I should point out that Galactic Conservation Code, Section 19, subsection—" "I know the law," Violet interrupted. Orathi were classified as dangerous megafauna. Interfering with their natural life cycle, even to save cubs, was strictly prohibited. The species was protected, sure, but in the way that kept everyone at a safe distance. Leave them alone. They leave you alone, and nobody gets disemboweled. The smallest cub took a wobbling step toward her and collapsed. Violet's hand tightened on her pistol. Protocol was clear. Call it in. Let nature take its course. Walk away. The cub made a sound that was eerily similar to a human baby crying. "Oh, for the love of—" Violet holstered her weapon and moved forward. I feel compelled to note that this violates approximately 19 different regulations, Wilt observed. Add it to my file. The cubs didn't run as she approached. They were too weak, too cold. Violet ran her scanner over them. Core temperatures dangerously low, signs of malnutrition. The smallest one had an infected wound on its back leg. She looked around the warehouse. No sign of what killed the mother. Poachers, maybe. The black market for Orathi parts was lucrative enough that some idiots were willing to risk the wrath of an entire warrior species. "Can you walk?" Violet asked the cubs, then felt ridiculous for talking to them. They stared at her with those unsettling golden eyes, old intelligence in young faces. The largest, barely, managed to stand. The other two were done. "Right. Plan B, then." Violet triggered her emergency beacon override, which would keep her location scrambled from central dispatch for exactly 2 hours before automatic override kicked in. Then she scooped up the two weakest cubs. They were heavier than they looked, solid muscle under that soft fur. One of them made a weak attempt to bite her glove, tiny teeth scraping harmlessly against reinforced polymer. Yeah, I'm kidnapping you. File a complaint with your union rep." The walk back to her outpost was pure misery. The wind fought her every step. The cubs were dead weight in her arms. The third one stumbled along behind, occasionally bumping into her legs. Her suit's power meter dropped steadily as the heating elements struggled against the cold. By the time she reached the outpost, a glorified shipping container with life support, her entire body ached and her hands had gone numb. "Wilt, crank the heat to maximum. That will deplete our reserves in approximately 6 hours. Do it anyway." She dumped the cubs onto her bunk and started stripping off her outer gear. The outpost was small. One room with a bunk, a food processor, a medical station that had seen better days, and enough storage for 2 weeks of supplies. It wasn't designed for guests, especially not guests with claws and dietary requirements that probably involved raw meat. The cubs lay in a pile, shivering. Their breathing was shallow. Violet grabbed every thermal pack she had, all 5 of them, and cracked them open, arranging them around the cubs. Then she pulled her emergency blankets out of storage and wrapped the tiny predators like oversized burritos. Okay, food. What do infant Orathi eat? Primarily their mother's milk for the first 6 months, Wilt supplied, followed by regurgitated meat. Fantastic. I'm fresh out of both. There are protein supplements in the medical kit. They won't be ideal, but better than nothing. Mix some up. While Wilt handled that, Violet treated the smallest cub's wound. The little one bit her, actually broke skin this time, but the injury was superficial. She wrapped the leg and hoped for the best. The cubs lapped up the protein mixture with desperate hunger, getting more of it on themselves than in their mouths. They were clumsy, uncoordinated. Babies, despite the predator package. Violet sat back and watched them, reality settling in like the cold she'd just escaped. She'd just violated a dozen laws, hidden 3 Orathi cubs from authorities, used emergency resources for personal purposes. The Galactic Mining Consortium would fire her. The Alliance might prosecute her. The Orathi themselves. Well, that depended on whether they saw this as rescue or kidnapping. "Wilt, how long until communications are back up?" "The storm has knocked out the relay satellites. Minimum 18 hours, possibly longer." 18 hours. Plenty of time for the cubs to die despite her efforts, or for her to come to her senses and report this. The largest cub crawled over to her, dragging its blanket, and head-butted her knee. Not aggressive. Affectionate, maybe? It made a chirping sound. "Don't get attached. Violet told it. "This is temporary. Once you're stable, we're figuring out where you actually belong." The cub curled up against her leg and promptly fell asleep. "Your core temperature is dropping," Wilt observed. "The thermal packs you gave to the cubs." "I know. You should retrieve at least 2 for yourself. They need them more." "Violet, at current rate of heat loss, you will experience hypothermic symptoms within 3 hours." "Then I've got 3 hours to figure this out." She pulled up everything Wilt had on Orathi biology. It wasn't much. The species was notoriously private, and most of what the Alliance knew came from combat encounters and tense diplomatic exchanges. They were warriors, honor-bound, fiercely protective of their young. They valued strength, but respected courage. They also had very specific ideas about debts and obligations. The temperature in the outpost peaked and started to drop again. Violet added another blanket to the cubs' pile. They burrowed deeper, a tangle of paws and tails and soft growls. Her own hands were shaking. She made herself some coffee, terrible, recycled, but hot, and tried to think. The smart play. Wait for comms to restore, call it in, claim she'd just found them. The honest play, same thing, but admit what she'd done. The problem, both options probably ended with the cubs dying in some quarantine facility, while bureaucrats argued about jurisdiction. Wilt, hypothetically, could I care for 3 Orathi cubs long-term? Define long-term. Until they're old enough to survive on their own. That would be approximately 18 months. In that time, you would need to provide specialized nutrition totaling roughly 2 tons of protein, environmental conditions matching their homeworld, socialization with adult Orathi to prevent behavioral issues, and medical care beyond your current capabilities. Also, at 6 months, they'll be strong enough to accidentally kill you. So that's a no. That's a, "Please don't make me watch you get eaten by your illegal pets." Violet laughed despite herself. The sound came out wrong, edged with exhaustion. She was so tired. The cold was seeping into her bones. Her emergency rations were depleted. Her power reserves were dropping. And she had 3 alien babies depending on her to have some kind of plan. The smallest cub, the one with the injured leg, woke up and looked at her. Really looked, with intelligence that seemed far too aware for something so young. Then it crawled out of the blanket pile, dragging its bandaged leg, and made its way to her. Climbed into her lap, tucked itself against her chest and started purring. A deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through her ribs. The other 2 followed, drawn by some instinct, piling onto her until she was buried under warm, furry bodies. "Your core temperature is stabilizing," Wilt said, surprise evident even in its synthetic voice. "They're sharing their heat with you." "Smart kids," Violet murmured. She wrapped her arms around them, these impossible creatures, and let herself rest for just a moment. Just a few minutes. Then she'd figure out the plan. Then she'd solve this. The storm howled outside. The outpost creaked. The power meter continued its steady decline. Violet's eyes drifted closed. Just a few minutes. The cold woke her. Not the manageable cold of the outpost, but the deep, wrong cold that meant something had gone critically bad. Violet tried to move and couldn't. Her limbs were lead. Her thoughts moved like frozen syrup. The cubs were still on her, but they weren't moving either. Their purring had stopped. "Wilt," she tried to say. It came out as a whisper. "Power reserves depleted," the AI responded, its voice distant. "Life support at minimum, external temperature -183 and dropping, storm intensifying." Violet tried to think. Emergency protocols. Backup generator. Something. Her hands wouldn't work. She couldn't feel her feet. The cubs stirred weakly. One of them made a plaintive sound. "Sorry, kids," Violet managed. "I tried." Her vision was tunneling. This was it then, frozen to death on an ice planet, hugging 3 alien babies she'd been too stubborn to leave behind. There were worse ways to go. The cubs pressed closer, trying to share warmth that none of them had anymore. Violet's last conscious thought was that she hoped someone found them before they were completely frozen. Maybe left some kind of record about what happened. The cubs deserved that much. The darkness took her gently, wrapped in fur and fading warmth. She didn't hear the atmospheric breach of the warship breaking through the storm. She didn't hear the doors explode inward. She didn't hear the roar of the Orathi Royal Guard as they found her. But they found her. And that changed everything. The Orathi didn't do anything quietly. It wasn't in their nature. So when the Royal Guard's warship punched through the atmosphere of Arcturus 9 like an angry god demanding attention, every sensor on the planet lit up like a religious experience. At the mining consortium headquarters, 3 different alarms went off simultaneously. The operations manager spilled coffee all over himself. The defense coordinator started cycling through threat protocols before his brain caught up to what his instruments were telling him. That wasn't a combat formation. That was a hunting party. And it was heading for the outer settlements at a speed that suggested very little concern for aerospace regulations. "Wilt to any functional guard units," the AI broadcast across all frequencies. "Medical emergency at Outpost Gamma 6. Urgent assistance required. Time is critical." The transmission was weak, barely cutting through the interference, but it reached the warship. Inside the command deck, Ithril studied the readings with predator focus. 3 cubs, 1 human, all of them dying. "Double thrust," he ordered. "Orthana, ground team on standby." "The storm is still," his second began. "Did I ask about weather conditions?" Orthana's ears flattened in acknowledgement. Ithral was in what the humans called a mood, which in Orathi terms meant someone was probably going to bleed before this was over. The High Commander's offspring were on that ice ball, and every minute mattered. The warship didn't so much land as crash in a controlled fashion, repulsor fields carving a crater in the ice half a kilometer from the outpost. Ithril was down the ramp before it fully deployed, his armor's servos whining in the cold. 6 warriors followed him, the best of the guard, each one a veteran of conflicts that had earned scars and stories. They moved through the blizzard like it was a minor inconvenience, thermal scans painting the world in shades of heat and void. The outpost registered as a dim glow. Barely any power. Minimal heat signature. Ithril's claws extended involuntarily. If the human had harmed those cubs, if this was some elaborate hostage situation, he would peel this structure open like fruit and make the perpetrator's death a cautionary tale. He hit the door at full sprint. It was locked. He tore it off its hinges. The interior was dark, cold, silent. His helmet's optics adjusted instantly, and what he saw made him stop so abruptly that Orthana crashed into his back. The human was on the floor, collapsed on her side, wrapped around 3 small bodies. Ice had formed on the walls, on the equipment, on the human's exposed skin. But the cubs, the High Commander's cubs, were nestled against her chest, tucked under her arms, covered by every blanket and thermal pack in the facility, none of which she was using herself. "Scan," Ithril ordered, his voice rough. Orthana moved forward, medical scanner active. "Cubs are alive, hypothermic but stable. They've been fed, treated. There's a medical kit here, used. The The smallest has a bandaged wound, properly dressed. She looked up, ears forward in surprise. They've been cared for. And the human? Core temperature 29 degrees. That's critical. I know. Ithral knelt beside the collapsed form. The human was young, female, wearing a security uniform that had seen better days. Her lips were blue. Her skin was gray. But her arms were still locked around the cubs, even in unconsciousness. Even while dying, she held them. One of the cubs stirred, making a weak, chirping sound. It nuzzled the human's hand. "They've imprinted," Orthana said quietly. "Look at the positioning. She's been with them for hours. They know her scent." Ithral's mind raced through implications. Humans and Orathi had history, most of it violent. 3 wars, countless skirmishes, a peace built on mutual respect and mutual wariness. The species didn't mix. They cooperated when necessary, but actual trust? That was rare enough to be notable. And this human had found royal cubs, would have known what they were. Anyone with basic species recognition would. And instead of reporting them, calling for help, or simply walking away, she'd brought them to her shelter, fed them, warmed them, given them everything she had. Given them everything. Period. The thermal packs arranged around the cubs, the blankets, the heat, while she froze. "Get her to medical," Ithral said. "Now." 2 warriors moved forward, but the moment they tried to separate the human from the cubs, all 3 infants went wild. Tiny claws out, teeth bared, making sounds that would eventually mature into battle roars, but currently sounded like angry, squeaky toys. Orthana made a sound that might have been a laugh if Orathi laughed. "They're defending her." "Of course they are," Ithral muttered. Because this situation wasn't complicated enough, he pushed past his warriors and knelt again, this time addressing the cubs directly in the low-frequency language of his people. A series of growls and rumbles that meant, roughly, "Peace, younglings. We're here to help. She's safe." The cubs quieted but didn't move. The largest one, probably the oldest by a few days, positioned itself across the human's chest and growled at Ithral, challenging him. A 3-month-old cub, barely weaned, challenging a royal guard warrior. Brave or stupid? Usually the same thing. "We don't have time for this," Orthana said. "Her brain is going to start shutting down in minutes." Ithral made a decision. "Bring them all. Together. The human needs intensive care. Then we provide it. With the cubs. They're not going to let her go, and we're not going to traumatize the High Commander's offspring by ripping them away from someone they've bonded with. Move!" The warriors obeyed, carefully lifting the entire group, human and cubs together, and rushing back to the warship. The largest cub continued to growl the entire way, tiny guardian protecting its unlikely savior. Inside the medical bay, things got creative. The Orathi had excellent medical technology, but it was designed for their biology. Humans were smaller, more fragile, with different tolerances. "We need to raise her core temperature," the ship's medic announced. "But human tissue can't handle rapid rewarming. It causes cellular damage." "How much time do we have?" Ithral demanded. "At this level of hypothermia? Minutes, maybe." Ithral's claws scraped against the deck plating. Not enough time. They'd come all this way, and they were going to watch her die anyway. "What about external heat?" Orthana suggested. "Intensive, carefully controlled. We'd need to raise ambient temperature in this bay to near lethal levels. For hours. The equipment isn't designed. Then redesign it." "Commander, even if we could generate that much heat safely, the power requirements..." Ithral turned to face his second. What's the nearest massive heat source? Orthana checked her tactical display. The southern district of the main colony, industrial sector. Mostly automated facilities and warehouses. Mostly? Evacuated due to storm damage. Some squatters, possibly. Ithril looked at the human on the medical platform, 3 cubs refusing to leave her side. He thought about honor, about debt, about the fact that this woman had violated laws and risked her career, and ultimately sacrificed her life for children that weren't her species. He thought about what the High Commander would do. Then he opened a channel to the ship's tactical officer. Prepare Protocol Crimson. Silence on the bridge. Then, Commander, I know what it is. Prepare it. Orthana moved closer, voice low. You're going to burn the city. I'm going to burn part of the city, the abandoned part, to generate a thermal column we can harness and redirect. The consortium will send complaints to the High Commander. I'm sure he'll be very concerned. Ithril's tone suggested the High Commander would do no such thing. That human collapsed protecting royal offspring. We don't leave debts unpaid. It's going to cause an interstellar incident. Only if she dies. If she lives, it's a rescue operation with unfortunate but necessary collateral damage. He showed teeth. Semantics. Orthana's ears went back in what might have been respect or exasperation. You're insane. I'm Orathi. Same thing. The channel crackled to life. Targeting solutions ready, Commander. Waiting on your authorization. Ithril looked at the human one more time. She'd stopped shivering, which was a bad sign. The cubs were making distressed sounds, trying to warm her with their small bodies. Authorized. Lighted up. 3 plasma charges launched from the warship, arcing through the storm with mathematical precision. They hit the Southern District's fuel depot, the abandoned factory complex, and the methane storage facility. The explosions were visible from orbit. Fire bloomed across the ice, angry and bright, consuming everything in a controlled inferno. The Guard's environmental teams deployed immediately, containing the burn, directing it, shaping it into a massive column of superheated air. Then they did something humans would later describe as aggressively innovative, and Orathi engineers would call adequate. They built a thermal transfer field, portable generators arranged in a grid, creating a tunnel of electromagnetic force that funneled heat from the burning city directly into the warship's medical bay. The temperature inside began to rise, carefully, gradually. The human's vitals started to stabilize, slowly, so slowly. The cubs finally relaxed, sensing the change, and curled up around her like furry guardian statues. Ithril stood watch. He didn't move for 3 hours. Outside, half a city burned. Inside, 1 human refused to die. Sometimes the math worked out. The thing about burning a city, even part of one, is that people tend to notice. The consortium's emergency channels exploded with chatter approximately 30 seconds after the first plasma charge hit. Administrators, who'd been safely enjoying their morning stimulants, suddenly found themselves staring at satellite feeds, showing their southern industrial district transforming into a localized apocalypse. Operations Manager Talvin, still wearing coffee-stained shirt from the earlier warship scare, watched his screens with the expression of a man whose day had moved beyond bad into historically catastrophic. "Get me the Orathi ship," he croaked. "They're not responding to hails, sir." "Then get me someone, anyone! I've got 30 billion credits of infrastructure turning into a bonfire." On the warship's bridge, the communications officer muted the incoming spam with a single claw tap. "The humans are attempting contact. Multiple channels. Increasing urgency." "Ignore them," Ithral ordered, not looking up from the medical readouts. "We're busy. They're threatening to invoke Alliance emergency protocols." "They can invoke whatever they want. We have royal cubs in medical crisis and a life debt situation. Everything else is paperwork." Orthana pulled up the thermal imaging. The burn was working exactly as planned, which was to say, terrifyingly well. The southern district was a churning mass of flames and superheated air, the temperature at the epicenter exceeding 2,000 degrees. Their containment fields held it in a tight column, directing the thermal energy through the transfer grid. In the medical bay, ambient temperature had climbed to 48 degrees. Uncomfortable for Orathi, potentially lethal for most other species. For the human, it was medicine. Violet's core temperature had risen to 32 degrees, still critical, but trending upward. Her heart rate was stabilizing, brain activity improving. The cubs refused to move from their positions around her. The largest one had its head on her shoulder. The middle one curled against her side. The smallest, the one with the bandaged leg, had claimed the space under her arm and would bite anyone who came too close. "Stubborn little monsters," the medic muttered, running another scan. "Just like their father." "How much longer?" Ithral asked. "At this rate? 2 more hours minimum, maybe 3. Her body is fighting hypothermia, yes, but also exhaustion, malnutrition, and what looks like 3 months of inadequate sleep. This human has been running on stubbornness and bad coffee." "A worthy warrior diet," Ithral observed, "for someone who wants to die young." The temperature continued to climb. 50 degrees, 52. The medical bay's cooling systems screamed in protest. Engineers rerouted power, adjusted parameters, performed mechanical miracles to keep the equipment from melting while still maintaining the heat. Down in the burning city, consortium security forces attempted to approach the fire line. The Orathi Guard politely but firmly established a perimeter. By politely, this meant 9-foot-tall armored warriors with plasma rifles, explaining that this was now Orathi sovereign space for medical purposes, and anyone crossing the line would experience immediate education about property rights. The security forces decided to wait for management decisions. Talvin tried the communications channel again. This time, someone answered. Orthana's face filled his screen, all teeth and casual menace. "You have reached the Orathi Royal Guard. Your call is important to us. Please continue holding." "You're burning my city." "Incorrect. We're burning approximately 18% of your southern industrial district. Precision is important." You can't just... There are laws." "There are also royal cubs in medical crisis," Orthana said calmly. "Would you like to explain to High Commander Nathanak why we should have prioritized your property over his children's lives? I can arrange a direct conversation." Talvin's face went through several interesting colors. Everyone in Alliance space knew about Nathanak. The Orathi commander who'd personally fought 3 separate fleets to a standstill, who'd negotiated the current peace treaty with one hand while holding a plasma blade to the throat of an Alliance admiral with the other, who was rumored to have once bitten through a bulkhead door because someone had gotten between him and an objective. The cubs," Talvin managed. "Are they alive, thanks to one of your security contractors, who is currently dying of hypothermia because she used all her resources to keep the cubs warm? We're correcting that situation. By burning 18% of my district? Would you prefer we let her die? Because I can stop the burn right now. Your choice." Talvin looked at his screens, at the fire, at the damage estimates scrolling past in real time, at the live feeds showing Orathi warriors in full combat gear establishing defensive positions. He thought about insurance, about legal liability, about the fact that the Royal Guard could probably burn the entire planet if they wanted, and the Alliance would file a strongly worded complaint at most. He thought about what his superiors would say when they found out he'd chosen property over the life of an employee. "Continue your medical procedure," he said finally. "But I'm documenting everything. The consortium will expect full reparations." "Send the invoice to High Commander Nathanak," Orthana suggested. "Include interest. He enjoys comedy." The channel closed. In the medical bay, something changed. Violet's fingers twitched. Her breathing deepened. The monitors showed neural activity spiking, consciousness returning. "She's waking," the medic announced. "Everyone stay calm. Don't startle her." Ithral moved to the platform's side. Around him, 6 elite warriors tensed. The cubs perked up, ears forward, tails starting to wag. Violet's eyes opened slowly, blinked, focused on the ceiling, which was definitely not her outpost's corrugated metal, focused on the heat, which was definitely not supposed to be happening, focused on the massive armored alien standing over her. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Please tell me I'm hallucinating," she croaked. "You collapsed protecting royal cubs," Ithral said, his translated voice a deep rumble. "We returned the favor. Welcome to an interstellar incident." Violet tried to sit up, failed, tried again. The cubs helped by climbing on her chest and licking her face with enthusiasm that bordered on assault. "Easy," the medic said, moving forward. "You've been hypothermic for approximately 6 hours. Your body needs time to—" "Why is it so hot?" Violet interrupted. "And why does it smell like burning?" Ithral and Orthana exchanged glances. "Perhaps it's better if we show you," Orthana suggested. They helped Violet to a viewport, carefully, with the cubs stubbornly clinging to various parts of her. She looked out at the planet's surface. Half the southern district was on fire. Massive, roiling flames contained in an impossible column of force and fury, heat shimmer visible even through the storm. Emergency vehicles clustered at the perimeter like frightened insects, and running from the fire to the ship, a glowing ribbon of thermal energy that pulsed with captured heat. Violet stared for a long moment. "You burned the city." "Part of the city," Orthana corrected. "Precision is important. To keep me warm. You were dying. The cubs wouldn't leave you. We required significant heat generation for rapid treatment." Ithral's tone suggested this was all perfectly logical. The southern district was mostly abandoned. Mostly? The squatters were evacuated. No casualties. He paused. Except to consortium property values. Violet continued staring. Her brain was trying to process this. She'd saved some cubs. Standard rescue situation, right? Maybe bending a few rules, sure, but they'd burned a city. For her. "I'm going to be arrested," she said faintly. "Prosecuted. Probably executed." "Unlikely." Ithral gestured at the cubs, who were now wrestling on her lap while trying to simultaneously maintain physical contact with her. "You saved the High Commander's offspring. Under Orathi law, that establishes a life debt. Anyone attempting to harm you would be declaring war on our entire species." "The High Commanders—" Violet looked down at the cubs, at their golden eyes and oversized paws, and the way they were currently using her as a jungle gym. "These are royal bloodline, yes. I kidnapped royalty." "You rescued royalty," Orthana corrected. Again, semantics matter. The smallest cub climbed onto Violet's shoulder and bit her ear. Gently, affectionately. She reached up reflexively to steady it. "They've imprinted on you," the medic explained. Your scent, your presence, your family now, in their perception. Separating them would cause psychological damage. So what happens now? Now, Ithral said, showing teeth in what might have been a smile or a threat display, we wait for the High Commander to arrive. He's approximately 3 hours out. And then we find out who tried to kill his cubs. Because they were bait, you understand. The warehouse, the location, the timing. Someone wanted to draw Nathanak out. You accidentally disrupted an assassination plot. Violet processed this. So I saved them, but also saved him, essentially. And the city that's currently on fire? Regrettable but necessary collateral damage in protection of royal interests. Ithral's tone suggested he'd practiced this phrase. Any court in Alliance space will uphold our actions. You sound very confident. I am. He leaned closer. You know what humans and Orathi have in common? We both understand proportional response. Someone threatens our young, we burn their world. Someone saves our young. He gestured at the fire. We burn a city to return the favor. Violet laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. You people are insane. We prefer committed. Orthana checked her tactical display. The fire should burn for another hour. We'll have you fully recovered by then. The cubs are healthy. You did excellent medical work, by the way. And the High Commander will want to thank you. Personally. Thank me by burning more cities? Probably by offering you citizenship, command position, possibly adopting you into his house. Nathanak gets enthusiastic about life debts. The cub on Violet's shoulder started purring, a deep rumble that vibrated through her skull. Outside, the city continued its controlled burn. Inside, surrounded by alien warriors and infant predators, Violet felt the absurdity of her situation settle over her like a warm blanket. She'd gone from freezing to death to international incident in under 6 hours. Somehow, this felt very on brand for her life. I don't suppose, she said carefully, there's any chance we could downplay the city burning part when this goes to report. Ithral's laugh was a sound like grinding boulders. Absolutely not. We're putting it in the official record. With citations. Of course they were. The cubs continued to purr, tiny furnaces of contentment. Outside, the flames climbed higher. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session approximately 8 hours after what historians would later call the Arcturus incident, and what everyone else called that time the Orathi lost their collective minds over some puppies. The chamber was full, which never happened for anything less than imminent war or catastrophic treaty violations. Representatives from 80 species packed the observation galleries. Media drones hovered like mechanical vultures. And at the center of it all, 3 massive holographic displays showed the same thing from different angles. A burning city, a human woman covered in alien cubs, and financial damage estimates that made actuaries weep. The consortium's legal team presented first. They had charts, they had property assessments, they had testimonies from 14 administrators, 30 security personnel, and 1 very traumatized operations manager who kept muttering about coffee stains and insurance premiums. 38 billion credits, the lead attorney announced. 38 billion in direct damage, not including secondary economic impacts, environmental remediation, or psychological counseling for affected workers. This is, by any legal standard, an act of aggression. The council murmured agreement. This was serious. This was unprecedented. This was... The chamber doors opened. High Commander Nathanak entered, and the murmuring stopped immediately. He was enormous, even by Orathi standards, nearly 10 feet tall, his armor polished to mirror shine, his claws retracted but visible. Scars crossed his face in patterns that told stories of battles won against impossible odds. His eyes were the same golden color as his cubs, but older, harder, infinitely more dangerous. He walked to the center of the chamber with the confidence of someone who'd personally killed 3 Alliance admirals in single combat, and then negotiated peace terms while standing on their corpses. Behind him walked Ithral, Orthana, and, to everyone's surprise, Violet, holding 3 extremely energetic cubs who seemed determined to explore everything in sight, with teeth and claws. "The Council recognizes High Commander Nathanak," the Arbiter announced nervously. Nathanak didn't bow, didn't acknowledge protocol. He simply placed one massive hand over his heart's and spoke in the deep, resonant language of his people, immediately translated by the Chamber's systems. "I am told there are complaints about property damage. This is understandable. The southern district of Arcturus IX's main colony was partially destroyed in a thermal generation operation. 18% burn coverage, minimal casualties, excellent containment." He paused. "I am here to address reparations." The consortium's attorneys perked up. "However," Nathanak continued, "context matters. My offspring, my cubs, were used as bait in an assassination attempt. They were abandoned in hostile conditions to draw me into an ambush. They should have died." He turned to Violet, who looked like she desperately wanted to be anywhere else. "This human found them. Lieutenant Violet of the Consortium Security Division. She violated regulations to provide shelter. She used her resources to feed them, warm them, treat their injuries. When her equipment failed, when the storm worsened, when she was freezing to death," he showed all his teeth, "she gave them everything. Her heat, her supplies, her life." The chamber was silent. "My guard arrived to find her unconscious, core temperature at lethal levels, but the cubs were alive, warm, protected. She had wrapped them in every thermal pack, every blanket. While she froze, they lived." Nathanak moved to stand beside Violet, dwarfing her. The cubs immediately climbed onto him, treating his armor like a playground. He didn't stop them. Under Orathi law, a life debt to one who saves royal bloodline is absolute and eternal. Lieutenant Violet is now under my personal protection. Any harm to her is harm to me. Any threat to her is war against my people. The consortium attorneys were frantically consulting their tablets. "As for the city," Nathanak continued, "my warriors made a tactical decision. Burn property to generate heat for medical treatment. They chose correctly. Property can be rebuilt. Lives cannot be restored." He pulled a small data chip from his armor and tossed it to the consortium's legal team. "Full reparations, 38 billion credits, plus interest, plus construction contracts to rebuild the southern district to improved specifications. Also included a formal apology from the Orathi High Council for the inconvenience." The lead attorney caught the chip with shaking hands. "This is acceptable. Good, because there's more." Nathanak's expression went from diplomatic to predatory in an instant. "The assassination attempt. Someone on this council knew about it. Someone funded it. Someone wanted my cubs dead as bait." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. "My intelligence division has been investigating. We've traced payments, communications, supply chains. 3 consortium officials were involved: Administrator Garvin, Security Director Tompkins, and Operations Liaison Velmoth." He gestured, and Ithral projected evidence onto the main displays: financial records, encrypted messages, shipping manifests for weapons-grade equipment. They hired poachers to kill the cubs' mother, positioned the cubs as bait. The plan was simple. I would come for my offspring, and they would eliminate me, then negotiate favorable mining rights with my successor, who they'd already bribed. Chaos erupted, council members shouting, security forces moving, the three named officials attempting to flee before being tackled by guards from multiple species. Violet watched the pandemonium with wide eyes. The smallest cub chirped at her, wanting attention. She scratched behind its ears automatically. "This is insane," she muttered. "This is politics," Orthana corrected, standing beside her. "You accidentally prevented a conspiracy, saved royal cubs, and created an interstellar incident. Congratulations on being the most interesting human this year." "I just wanted to help some babies." "And you did. Everything else is consequences." The council eventually restored order. The three conspirators were remanded to Alliance custody for trial. The consortium's remaining leadership tripped over themselves, apologizing, and Nathanak turned his attention back to Violet. "Lieutenant Violet, you have my eternal gratitude. More importantly, you have my respect." He knelt, which was significant because Orathi commanders didn't kneel for anyone, bringing himself closer to her eye level. "I offer you Orathi citizenship, a position in the Royal Guard, a home on our homeworld." Violet looked at the massive alien warrior, at his cubs, who were now playing tug-of-war with her jacket, at the council chamber full of species watching her every move. "That's incredibly generous," she said carefully, "but I think I'd like to stay on Arcturus 9. Someone needs to keep an eye on these three." She gestured at the cubs. "Make sure they grow up properly." Nathanak's ears went forward. "You wish to raise them?" "Not alone. I'm not qualified. But maybe supervised visits? Until they're old enough to return home? They've imprinted. Separating them now would be cruel." The High Commander considered this. Then he laughed, a sound that made the entire chamber flinch. "You want shared custody of royal cubs. You are either brilliant or insane. Can't it be both?" "It can." He stood. "Agreed. You will remain on Arcturus 9 as official guardian and liaison. My people will provide resources, education, support. The cubs will split time between worlds, and in 18 months, when they're ready, they return home." "Just 18 months? Orathi mature quickly. They'll be adolescents by then, probably driving you to madness." "Looking forward to it," Violet lied. 3 months later, the southern district of Arcturus 9 reopened. The Orathi had rebuilt it bigger, better, with heating systems that actually worked and architecture that blended human efficiency with Orathi aesthetic. It became a cultural exchange hub, the first place where both species lived and worked side by side. Violet's outpost was replaced with an actual facility, with proper medical equipment, with quarters large enough for 3 rapidly growing cubs who kept eating her furniture. She trained new security personnel in cold weather survival, mediated disputes between human miners and Orathi contractors, and every evening she came home to 3 predators who would eventually grow large enough to accidentally kill her, but who currently just wanted belly rubs and dinner. Ithril visited monthly, ostensibly to check on the cubs, really to complain about paperwork and drink terrible human coffee. "The council is still arguing about proper protocols," he said during one visit, watching the cubs demolish a training dummy. "How to classify the incident, whether it sets legal precedent." "What do you think?" Violet asked. "I think we burned a city to save a life, and we'd do it again." He showed teeth. Proportional response. The largest cub, nearly 4 feet tall now, bounded over and knocked Violet flat, started licking her face with enthusiasm that bordered on assault. "Get off, you menace!" she laughed, pushing at solid muscle that barely moved. Ethel's expression might have been approval. "You know, for someone who supposedly kidnapped royal cubs, you've adjusted well." "I prefer rescued." Violet finally extracted herself. "Semantics matter." "That they do." Outside, the rebuilt district hummed with activity. Human and Orathi working together, trading together, occasionally arguing but mostly coexisting in the way that only shared survival could create. Inside, 3 cubs wrestled over who got to sleep on Violet's bed that night. And somewhere in the archives, an official report documented the whole affair with dry precision. Incident resolved. Reparations paid. Interspecies cooperation established. Recommendation: don't threaten the cubs. Because sometimes the cost of doing the right thing is a burning city. And sometimes that's exactly the price worth paying.